Hey folks, this is Rob Ickes,
And this is Trey Hensley, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along.
the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's a new week and a new interview on the podcast. I've got two guests for you this time. One guest I've had on previously and a new guest. So this is Rob Ickes and Trey Hensley this week. I've had a chat with Trey before, and if you missed that, go back and dig out that episode because that was great. But I'm talking to them both about the new record they've got out, which is due actually be out by the time you hear this. So yeah, it's really cool. Great to catch up and have a chat about their record and some really interesting stuff in there. Just really nice guys to talk to. So I hope you enjoy that. There's some new stuff coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks, a whole new episode every week. I'm going to tell you a bit more about that in due course, but keep your eyes and ears peeled because there's some really cool stuff coming on the podcast soon. But that's it. I'm going to let you hear Rob and Trey, and I will see you next time. My guests on Bluegrass Jam Along this week are one absolute stalwart of the bluegrass music scene and one very much rising star, even though he's been around for quite a while himself already. I have Rob Ickes and Trey Hensley. Welcome to Bluegrass Jam Along.
How's it going?
Thanks for having us,
It's good to have you here. Trey, nice to see you again. You've been here before.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us back, man. This is fun.
Great to see you. And particularly interesting to talk to you right now as we record this. You have a new record about to come out. By the time this is out there for people to listen to, the new record will be out. So it'd be really cool to talk about that. But I'd really like just for a second to hear from you, Rob, about sort of how you two started working together, because I've heard from Trey before, but it'd be cool just to hear sort of how your duo got together, really.
Yeah, I met Trey when he was a little kid, and I played with Earl Scruggs probably for about 10 years. And Earl was a big fan of Trey's, and I know they met when Trey did the Opry, with Marty Stewart when he was just 11 or 12. And so I probably met Trey a few months after that, and I remember we were playing at the Tennessee Theater, which is a beautiful theater in Knoxville, Tennessee. And Earl had invited Trey to sit in, and, Trey just got up there and crushed it. We did Jimmy Brown, the Newsboy, which has a very classic, Earl Scruggs guitar part to it, and, sang it great. I mean, at that time he was pretty young, so his voice wasn't near, what it is today. And so I just kind of thought, wow, this kid's awesome. It's great. And then we would cross paths once in a while. And then I'm trying to think what year it was, like 2014 or 2015. We were doing a Blue Highway album. And there was one song that we were going to send to another artist to put a lead vocal on as like a special guest. And it was original that Tim Stafford and Wayne Taylor had wrote. And so we needed somebody to sing a scratch vocal so that we could save the instrument tracks. You know what I mean? Because if Tim sang it, he'd have to redo his guitar because the vocal would bleed over the guitar microphone. And so the guy who owned the studio is good friends with Trey. And he said, hey, let me call Trey Hensley. He can sing the scratch vocal. He'll do a great job. And so Trey came in the next day and, we ran the song down just a couple times. And we were all super impressed with how, he just learned it super quick and he sang the heck out of it. Just absolutely stellar vocal. But I think we were all kind of focused on our tracks and, whatever. And so a couple of days later, the engineer sent us the rough mixes and we all just kept listening to that lead vocal. And it was like, damn, that's really good singing. I don't even think our special guest could sing as well as what Trey has done on there. And so we decided just to leave Trey's vocal on there and maybe give him a start to his career, and just kind of help him out or whatever and help us out. Cause honestly, it was just such a great vocal. And then Trey and I just kind of became friends and I feel like I was kind of mentoring him, he called me and we talked about, he was thinking about moving to Nashville. And I said, definitely you should do it. I think you're really serious talent, and I think you'd do well here. And I'd be happy to introduce you around, and then like the next day he called and his wife had got a job here and they were moving to Nashville, so it's just like that. And I was like, cool, let's start playing some shows at the Station Inn, and would love to, introduce you around. So we did that, and then we ended up doing a record together, and I guess the rest is history,
And here we sit with a new record to talk about, Living in a Song. And it feels like, I haven't had a chance to hear the whole record yet because as we record this, it's not out. But the bits I have heard and what I know about it, it definitely sounds like there's a slight sort of direction change from the previous. There's been quite a blues sort of vibe to the past few records. And this definitely feels like it's leaning much more in a country direction.
Yeah, that's... I think that was just the way the material, kind of fell together. The last two, I'm not really sure. It's like we obviously are influenced by blues music, bluegrass, country. This one was the first one that we sat down with the intention of writing all the material for, and I think it just kind of happened that like a lot of these songs were country sounding songs, and so, when we put it together, it definitely has a more country sort of side to it, that the other three records haven't had. And the last one was very blues influenced. This is definitely a little different for what we've normally done,
Yeah. And I think part of the reason too is, we set a goal for ourselves to write most of this album. And we've written a lot on the other ones, but not this much. And so we wrote 10 out of 12 on this one. And I guess that's just kind of where our writing style took us, or the people we co-wrote with, were more in the country world. And that's one of the fun things. And one of the challenges of this project, is that we both like a lot of different styles of music. And, with the dobro and the guitar, you can get away with murder, and kind of do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be one thing. And so, and we had, I think we kind of talked about, this is going to be more of a country album or Americana, whatever that word means. There's a lot of different styles in there, but it definitely has a little more of a country feel. I think that's safe to say.
And I presume the choice of producer was sort of led by that because you went with Brent Mayer, who's obviously produced all sorts of people in the country world.
Yeah, I think, the last record we did, World Full of Blues, was our first record that we had worked with Brent. And honestly, we just kind of, when we decided we were going to do another record, I don't think we ever talked about, are we going to use Brent again? We just kind of went in and, it's like any opportunity we get to work with Brent, we're chomping at the bit. And then, so it was kind of like when we finished World Full of Blues, we just kind of said, okay, well, we'll see you guys next month. I guess we'll get back to work on the next thing, And then COVID happened, and we started writing, through Zoom. And I guess the first song we wrote after the pandemic had started was with Brent over, I guess, just a phone call, and that was Is the World Still Turning? That's on the record. And then, I think Brent's obviously his major hits have been in the country field, but he's worked with everybody from worked some with Louis Armstrong and Chuck Berry and Elvis and anybody you could really think of. So it's his reach is wide, our reach is wide, so it just kind of felt natural to work together.
Yeah, totally. And I was going to ask about that actually. There's sort of, if the choice was taken to try and write as much of the new record as possible, being at home for 2 years is certainly going to give you time to work on that, isn't it?
Well, that was part of it too. I mean, the record is COVID influenced, in that, all our touring was not going to happen. So we just switched gears, and hit the songwriting thing pretty hard. I mean, we did a lot of Zoom sessions, and it was great. I mean, we've both written before, but not this much, and not sort of like, okay, on Thursday we're going to write, just sort of more disciplined about it, which I think was new for both of us. And, but I tell you, it was a great process, and just to start with nothing at the beginning of a Zoom and then have something at the end was really exciting and creative, and that was a great experience. Makes me feel, more confident about doing it in the future. Just like I said, the whole process was kind of fascinating to me because sometimes, and co-writing is fun because you might just have an idea and you throw it out there and then somebody else takes the baton and, oh yeah, here's, how about this for a first verse, or how about this for a turnaround lick? And then somebody else is like, yeah, why don't we kill this guy this verse, or, why don't we do this? And so it can, when you run out of ideas, somebody else can kind of take it and carry it across the finish line or, vice versa. So that part of it was fascinating for me and just enjoyable.
Did you find yourself sort of writing differently doing that rather than if you were sat in a room together? I know you sort of said there was a bit more process there as a result, maybe.
Yeah, I think it worked well for us. It seemed like we wrote with so many different people over COVID too. It was always the two of us, but we would write, with just a whole bunch of different people. And some people we would talk to, they didn't like, doing the Zoom right. But I think we were productive, doing it that way. I mean, it was a little different. You're not in the room with somebody, so you can't. It's a little harder just to pull things out of thin air. There was a couple of songs like the song "Louisiana Woman" that we recorded that was literally just pulled out of thin air when we were writing with Brent. And we were all in the room together. And I don't think that song would have happened over Zoom. Maybe it would have, but I don't know that it could have. But for the most of them, it seemed like it went pretty well. And we had a couple of years to really work on the Zoom thing. So it seemed like it went pretty well.
And who else have you written with for this record then?
I know the second song we did with Mark Narmore, with a friend of ours in Alabama. And then Rob, I know you probably have more insight on that.
Brent. Well, we wrote a bunch with Brent, our producer. And then Trey wrote one with Bobby Starnes, who writes a lot of bluegrass stuff. Him and Tim Stafford write a lot together. He's a great writer. And then Tom Yutz, we all wrote Moonshine Run together. Well, at different times together. Some bluegrass writers and some country people. And we wrote with a lot of other people. We probably wrote over 30 songs total, but, there's only 10 of them on this record. But yeah.
And Tom Ickes is one of those people that just I first heard his name probably at some point last year, and ever since, pretty much everybody I speak to is in some form written with or spoken to, or what. He just seems to be one of those people that like connected to everybody in the world that I'm talking to.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. I know he and I wrote a lot for several years. I used to live fairly close to him, and so we would get together, every once in a while and write. But I think I met Tom randomly. We played at the Bluebird Cafe years ago, and Tom was, and I can't even remember what it was for, but it was like a benefit show. And I think Tom was there playing, and he asked if I would play on his song. And I think that was the first time I'd ever met him, and we kind of connected at that show, and we wrote quite a bit. I think Tom did 2 records over the course of COVID, and he and I had several songs on those records, and I think I sang one of the songs on one of them. But yeah, he's a busy guy, man. He's always writing.
Yeah, so it seems that way. And it's cool to hear some more electric sounds, particularly on the recent single "Moonshine Run," because I'm sure everybody knows you as a lap steel player as well as a dobro player, Rob. But Trey, you're pretty visible as an acoustic player, mostly, I guess, to a lot of people. Yeah,
it's that was fun. Before I started playing acoustic guitar when I first started, and then yes, at a certain point later in my teenage years, I guess I started playing in a country band, and I really didn't play acoustic guitar much, again, until Rob and I started working together. I was primarily an electric guitar player. I did a couple solo country records, and I don't know, but I think I played acoustic guitar on like one track on those 2 records, but was mostly an electric player. And then I went back to the acoustic, and it's definitely the thing that I love the most, but I do love playing electric. And so that was fun to bring those out for this record.
In terms of the songwriting, do you sort of find that do you have sort of influences as songwriters in the way that you have influences as an instrumentalist? Are there particular songwriters that you sort of both bonded over or talked about before this process?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like I haven't written much lyric stuff before this, but as a dobro player, myself anyway, I mean, I'm always super listening to the lyrics, because I want to play instrumentally what's happening in the song. So I'm listening. The lyric kind of tells me what to play. Do I play a blues lick? Do I play it soft? Or do I really hammer this note? And so, so I feel like I've been studying lyrics, my whole life, even though I haven't really been a songwriter. And, I mean, I guess, I'd have to say Merle Haggard because his songs are the greatest, and just pulls you in like nobody. Of course, combined with his vocal, you have there's no chance of getting away. He's going to pull you in to that story, and that's another thing I like is just some singers are what we call picture singers, when the way they sing creates a picture in your mind, like Ray Charles would do that, or Merle Haggard. They'll put a little spin on a lyric or just a syllable or whatever, and it paints a picture, and so those are all things that I geek out on and pay attention to as a musician, and I guess lyrics is throw that in the same boat. But I mean, there's a truth and an honesty about Merle Haggard's songwriting that's a nice thing to strive for,
Yeah, I think with working with Brent too, he kind of helped with that. He's such a great songwriter that I feel like we both learned a lot from working with him. And he had worked a lot with Harlan Howard and a lot of other great writers that I'm sure rubbed off on him in that same way. So yeah.
And it's interesting, Rob, to hear you say you sort of hadn't really written all that much personal stuff lyrically before this, because there's a very personal song on this record. I Thought I Saw a Carpenter about your dad, and that's about as personal as you're going to get.
Yeah, and maybe that's another example of having my radar up, and yeah, a few days before my dad passed away, he had pancreatic cancer, which is by the time they know what it is, they can't do anything for you, so they said, oh, you've got about 4 weeks, and they were exactly right. And so we all, we brought him home, and I flew out to California, and we all, my brother and sister and I, my mom, we just, spent as much time with him, took as good a care of him as we could. And yeah, just a few days before he passed away, he was just having a rough morning. You kind of have to keep the pain medicine ahead of the pain, and the illness. And so one morning, the pain got really intense. So we kind of had to up his medicine, and he was feeling better a little bit later. And he said, I thought I saw a carpenter. And I thought, wow, that's just kind of a cool way of describing a near-death experience, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and so I guess a couple of months later when Trey and I got together with Brent, I just kind of threw that title out there or that line out there and told him the story, and it was the seed of the whole song, although the song isn't really, exactly kind of what happened in my situation, but it was used as a starting point for the rest of the song, and I still think that's a killer line.
And Trey, sort of, do you approach a record differently when you've written the bulk of the tunes on it as a singer, particularly? Like, is it different having that sort of connection to the material than an album of songs that might have been written by a bunch of people? We'll be right back with you just after this. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins. If you're attending the NAMM show in January, stop by the Collings booth to say hello to the team, get hands-on with their selection of customised acoustics and electrics, and check out some exciting new prototypes they're working on for 2024. They'll also have a few of their world-class artists on hand demoing various instruments. And if you can't attend, don't forget to follow their Instagram and Facebook accounts throughout the show for photos, videos, and the latest news. Collings guitars are hand-built from the Sound Up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If one of your 2024 resolutions is to improve as a musician, Peghead Nation is the place to go. They have 65 streaming video courses for guitar, mandolin, banjo, fiddle, dobro, bass and ukulele from some of the leading names in acoustic music. Courses cover bluegrass, old time, Irish music and swing, plus lessons dedicated to improvisation, theory and ear training. Your first course is just $20 a month and you can add more for $10. Try any course free for a month with the promo code JAMALONG. Make 2024 a year of more music at pegheadnation.com.
Yes and no, kind of, because it's a lot of the songs from our previous records, I think, we picked those out pretty carefully. And, a lot of the songs that we write, from my perspective, aren't necessarily personal. They're not, I have a hard time writing autobiographically. It helps me, even just reading things, a lot of times I just like to read things from other people's perspectives or, just stories. I like Tom T. Hall's songwriting because it was a lot of stories about other people, and even songs like, Ballad of $40 or whatever that, he's writing from the perspective of a gravedigger that, in a humorous way. And I love those songs. And so I think when I write, I have a tendency to write from somebody else's perspective. So there's not necessarily that connection that's like, other than the song, the last song on the record, which is Thanks, was a little personal, because I wrote that kind of with my wife and daughter in mind. But other than that, it's like Moonshine Run. I never ran Moonshine, I never made Moonshine. I knew people that did, but I never did, and so it wasn't necessarily coming from a personal place. But I kind of, like Rob mentioned earlier, as far as Merle Haggard or Larry Sparks or any of those singers that, like to, when they sing it, it seems like it's coming from their perspective. And so those were my favorite singers. And so I think I try to do that myself, whether it comes across or not is something different, but I do like to think of it in that way. So, it is yes or no. I feel like I was very proud that we wrote all these songs and I do feel personal on that level about it. But, as just a singer, I just try to sing every song I can, with as much conviction as possible.
I think that's a really cool thing is that idea of, and country is steeped in this as is bluegrass, is just the idea of a story song. One of my favorite songwriters is Steve Earle, and he does that beautifully. And I think sometimes you can be more moved by seeing the world through somebody else's eyes in that format than just hearing another person's direct experience. They can both take you somewhere totally different.
Yeah, and I know, just talking about these little vocal things too, and songwriting, the title track, I just love Trey's vocal, in the first verse. There's just, I can't remember which line it is right now, but there's a line in there. He just, he just does a certain phrasing thing that is perfect, and it's just really appropriate for the lyric. And but he does that all the time without even thinking about it.
And it's interesting that you both sort of mentioned like musicians who deliver something with a directness and they make it their own and have that. Because one of the, you've written nearly everything on this record. One of the tracks you didn't write that's on this is Way Downtown. And Doc Watson is somebody that obviously all of us associate with that level of directness and ability to deliver. And it's really cool to hear that this year because there's so much noise around what would have been Doc's 100th birthday next month. It feels like everybody's celebrating Doc, which is great. And it's just lovely to have a Doc Watson song there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big, obviously for both of us, Doc was, I think anybody that has picked up a guitar and played this kind of music since, 1967 can kind of thank Doc, so that we've been doing Way Downtown for a number of years now. And I think it was just one of those we threw out, during the pre-production, but Brent just really loved that one. And obviously we do too, because we've been playing it for so long. But yeah, I mean, Doc vocally and instrumentally was a big part of my musical life, still kind of seems like he and Tony were the guiding light for all of us, so it's he's still present in our musical life for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when Trey and I first started working together, I thought, man, this guy's like Doc Watson in the 21st century. Just one of our first shows, the promoter came up after and he said, I don't think I've ever heard anybody sing that well that also plays that well. And I said, I would agree with that, so I think you got to reach back to Doc Watson or Tony Rice, to hear somebody that can do it like Trey does it. It's just always just great to hear,
And that track's got Stuart Duncan on fiddle as well, who, there's always great to hear Stuart in any setting. So just curious to know, I've seen you've got quite a few tour dates lined up for this already, sort of through spring and summer. Are you touring it as a duo? Have you got a band with you for those?
We do some of both, a lot of duo stuff, but like the 2 shows this week are with the band, and Mike Bubb plays bass with us usually. You probably know Mike. He's one of the greats. Yeah. And then our drummer is John Alvey, monster musician. They've both played on all of our records. John didn't play on the first one, but he's played on the last 3 or last 2, including this one is 3. So yeah, I think we're going to do more band stuff this year than in the past. It's fun, it's, I like both things, so I like the simplicity of the duo, and the travel obviously is a lot easier. But it's nice to have the power of that rhythm section behind you, and you can kind of relax a little bit and fall into the groove a little more, But yeah, it's nice to change it up, and do different things.
Yeah, and is the sort of the touring for this record going to keep you busy pretty much for the rest of the year? Is that the plan?
Yeah, that's the plan.
It's looking like it. Yeah, yeah. It was last year was really busy. I mean, from October to November, not 1 month, but like 13 months.
Yeah,
boy, October to November was crazy. October 21, to November 22. And we've had a little time off the road here in December and January. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to getting back out there. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be another crazy year. So that's what we like. We feed off it.
Yeah.
I know we were just chatting, Rob, before we started recording about bigmusictent.com, your sort of teaching site, that you've both got some content on there as well, which is, the amount of, it's so much easier to find really good quality instruction these days. But I know you've got a lot of content on there and you're adding more as you go. And there's also some stuff from Trey as well.
Yeah, we started that just like probably 6 months before COVID, and that was nice timing, because everybody during COVID decided to learn an instrument, and so, but no, it's been nice, been kind of thinking about doing that for a while, and a friend of mine approached me coincidentally and just said, hey, I'd like to throw this all together, and all you got to do is do your thing. And so I said, yeah, that sounds good to me. So, yeah, it's been a great experience. It's, we have tons of videos there, and then we keep adding to it. And, you can ask me a specific question on there about a song or a lick or a session or whatever, and excuse me. So I feel like it's real it's a real customizable format. We've got lots of different topics, and then you can also send in videos of yourself playing and just add, hey, critique this, or how am I doing on this, or do you got any tips? And so it's pretty cool. I mean, it's just a popular format these days, and it works well. And then, yeah, Trey has a set of downloadable videos there also that are great. And so that's been a nice thing for us. Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, just, talking about people can ask you questions, and just how accessible people in this world of sort of bluegrass, Americana, whatever you want to call it, actually are, how easy it is to actually, and particularly now, so many people on social media, chance just to feel like you do see a bit of the process and what people are up to, and and it feels like, particularly those couple of years where nobody was going anywhere, to feel connected through things like that, I think was a really important thing.
Yeah, it's like the internet, I guess, it started just about sharing information, and that's a great example of it. It's just, yeah, here's what we do, or here's what we're thinking about, when we're doing this. We did some live streams during COVID, and I know Trey's done a lot more, on his own. And I just run into people all the time. Oh man, I heard Trey play Red Wing today. That was great. It's like their morning cup of coffee at this point, can't get by without it. So yeah, it's been a good thing.
And I think in some ways, like going back to the first track you wrote for the record, Is the World Still Turning? Some of those things are what kept the world still turning when it felt like it wasn't. It just felt, helped us feel like we were still able to get in touch with each other and somehow remain part of something. So stuff like that's really cool. So tour for the rest of the year. Good luck with the record. I'm really looking forward to hearing the whole thing. It'll be out by the time people hear this. It's just been great chatting to you both. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, man. Enjoyed that.
Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.